Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Get ready to dive into a world of AI with Todd Kueny, a seasoned entrepreneur and leader with over 20 years of experience in the technology industry. As the founder of Claris AI, Todd is on a mission to make AI accessible and transformative for businesses across various industries. With a unique focus of ethical AI and client-centric solution, Todd's work is pushing the boundaries of innovation while ensuring responsible advancements. Join us as we explore Todd's journey, the future of AI, and how he's shaping the next era of technology. Todd, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little about Claris AI, what it is, and what it's solving.
Yeah, that's a great segue. So Claris AI was founded about a year ago now, and the whole concept around it was, at the time, ChatGPT and things like that were getting big. And really, again, I think when people start companies, a lot of times they think it needs to be some super revolutionary thing. And not to say that we're not doing some of that stuff in the background, but at the end of the day, it's more about what Claris AI is the ability to provide artificial intelligence technology to companies like IT enterprises and things like that, that's consistent, reliable, and doesn't lie to you or doesn't make things up, right? It's just a good, solid AI service and platform that you can work with and rely upon for your business.
That's awesome. So, you've been at the forefront of making AI accessible across multiple industries. What initially inspired you to focus on AI? How'd your journey begin in this field? What were you doing before this?
Yeah, So prior to this, I led and co-founded a company called PatientWing. And my background and expertise is mainly I'm a software engineer at heart. I love to solve hard problems. But prior to this, I started a company called PatientWing with a few other people, and the whole idea behind that was to provide patient recruitment services for clinical trials, specifically in the rare disease space. And the reason why we focused on that is because care for certain types of chronic conditions or rare diseases can be very difficult for patients in their lives and their daily lives. And our goal was to try to help those people. We kind of saw a big problem in the patient recruitment space. A lot of the pharmaceuticals or biotechs were having trouble recruiting, diverse sets of patients or patients with certain kind of diseases. And so that's what led us into it. And we wanted to solve that problem.
Okay, good. So what was so you have Novus Holdings in the past, you Claris AI, how has this whole thing evolved over the years?
Yeah, it's another so that's a good one. So it's all kind of evolved, not necessarily in a conscious way, right? Like so when I started, I used to when I was younger, again, was just more of a software engineer, and I learned I didn't really start a lot of businesses until probably in the last 10 years or so. And a lot of that time was spent just learning things, right? I don't have necessarily a huge educational background. And so a lot of the experiences I've learned or things that I've learned is through actually doing it experience. For example, at PatientWing, I didn't have any money to help start that. And when I started that, it was, I offered my skill and time, like nights and weekends and just everything I could other than money. And then that kind of led into it. But it's funny because with the experience that I have, all the companies that have kind of grown with me and are still, luckily, that are still there, all kind of have a general direction to them, which is the ability, it's like, treating people fairly, taking accountability and responsible usage within the business landscape, right? Because I think a lot of companies these days lose focus on some of that, and it just becomes more of the cash cow type vibe. And so, we're trying to keep it just balanced, and treating people fairly. And that's really the goal. But ultimately, to help people and to help people improve what they're doing is kind of the ultimate goal.
Yeah, corporate culture is so important. Like you said, pretty much what you said was like not be transactional, pretty much, not
Yeah.
put people over profits. I mean, obviously, the whole purpose of a business is to be a solution to a problem and be profitable based off that, of course. But at the same time, taking into account, hey, like people drive profits at the end of the day. If you don't have a core team, great employees, great innovators, there's no profits no matter what. So uh,
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
in
Well said.
before the profits. AI is like in the past couple of years has rapidly evolved like crazy. What key strategies have been essential for ensuring that Claris AI has been like kind of staying ahead of the curve with offering tailored AI solutions?
Yeah, so that's definitely a good one. So I think there's a couple key aspects to it, right? And I would start with by saying, AI has evolved quite a bit, in my opinion. In fact, what led me to it was one of my previous experiences with ChatGPT about a year ago, and that's kind of what led me to do this whole Claris AI. But I would also add to that, as kind of a close second, which is not every company actually needs AI, right? So there's this AI buzz that happens, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of applications, and it's going to transform in the next 5 to 10 years. I think things will be completely different as we see it now, right? But at today, I'm talking about right now, is like someone trying to gain traction. You don't necessarily always need AI, right? I think it, so one of the key things we do at Claris is when we talk to potential clients or partners or people in our relationships, we try to be very honest about like, hey, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? And then can AI really help? And even if it can't, maybe there's a segue where it could help, right? Maybe you're doing a lot of repetitive things. And so just kind of staying on that honest vibe where it's like, hey, maybe you don't need it right now, but you might need it at this point. So, I think um, the one strategy is to be very honest and actually help the people based off their business goals, not just trying to take their money.
Right.
So that's one. And then I think two is a lot of companies start AI businesses and they think there's like when they first started, they raise all this money with an idea around the AI specifically, and they kind of forget that there's still all this other IT stuff that still needs to be managed, right? It's like internet, cloud, storage. So all those things are still there. It's like not like that goes away. So you can't just hire AI developers and then be like, oh, we're done. No, it's so there's still a lot, I think, in that sense. But I would say we're one of the biggest strategies where we've been winning and what has drove us where we are so far is using AI to leverage automation and like business workflow. I mean, or like in like sales operations within the company, right? Not necessarily as something you sell, but just we're leveraging it to help us grow faster, right? Because what they tell you is they'll be like, oh, well, AI is going to replace all these roles, and I believe that because well, we're doing that now. We don't have to hire 7 marketing people or this, so there's a lot, but I think there's still a lot that we need to learn too. But AI has helped us, I'd say, gain traction very quickly. But yeah.
For sure. I mean, I love it. It makes my life a lot easier. Like you said, marketing. I can have a Sintra bot or a ChatGPT bot, just do all my marketing for me on my behalf, create all the copy, the scripting, the hooks, the call to actions, all on, just give them a brief description and bam, I have 180 pieces of marketing material, and it's like boom. I would have to pay for that, call it 5, 6, 7 years ago, which is or more. I'm still fairly new to AI as well. But yeah, it's definitely been a game changer for sure. Now, you spoke a little bit about like a client. Can you describe like a particularly challenging project where your commitment to like ethical AI application played a crucial role?
Yeah, I would say one of the big advancements, and one thing that's been helping us quite a bit, well, I would say two, but I'll kind of focus on one, which is so AI. led us to have the ability to do OCR based technology very easily. And not to say that OCR technology wasn't big. There's things like OpenCV and there's a lot of things out there where you can do it. But where I think AI really shines is it's very like dynamic. And I'll give you a very specific use case, right? Let's say you have different templates that are managed, let's say PDFs or images that you have that are in different formats, but the information on them is kind of the same, and you're trying to just extract a general set of information out of it. AI can really excel at processing almost any format you have as long as that information's on there, and then giving you a structured way to pull it out and then do actionable things with it, right? So I would say OCR technology is a big one. But I think the other place where we've gained a little bit of traction is in the generative AI and kind of analytics space, right? Where you would think, oh, there's a million chatbots out there and there's a million things like this. But I think if you understand business workflows and certain aspects of it, just like you mentioned, generative AI can be huge. And I think, where people fall short sometimes with things like ChatGPT is that it's not necessarily reliable, right? Sometimes you could ask the same question, but get two different answers sometimes depending on what you ask, right? So it's
Yeah.
usually pretty. It's not to say that it's like bad. It's because it's very good, but I don't know if it's like QA, like auditable good, right? Can I rely upon it? And each time I call it with a specific set of things, can I rely on the output and then do actions based off that, the reasoning of it, things like that. Now they're doing a lot to improve that, but that's kind of where we like to shine, and we excel, I would say, in those types of services. Yeah, so I guess I'll pause there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've experienced it plenty of times where, you ask the whatever AI you're using a specific question or a task, and then you'll ask it to continue on that thread, and it'll like kind of forget what you originally asked it to do, and it'll like
Hmm.
start to change the format or change the answer the template that you wanted it to do. You have to go back and retrain it again to, do all the stuff that you wanted it to do. So I feel like it's a learning process, and they're training the AIs to be better. Um, but hell, it's still amazing. What upcoming trends trends or opportunities in AI are you most excited about, and how is Claris AI, kind of preparing for them?
Yeah, so Claris AI, we're positioning it and kind of two different. So there's two main, uh, I would say, industries we're kind of pointed at. So one is life sciences, which my background, and when I say life sciences, it's really just like healthcare, but it's kind of a focus on clinical settings and clinical research. But so Claris AI is positioned well, I think, to kind of get the foot in the door there, as well as build some innovative technologies that we're working on right now with specific clients, right? So we've already signed a few clients now in that space, and we're in the middle of implementing and rolling out those, kind of proving out what we're saying, right? Like it's like I think the first step as a company, or at least in my opinion, is to prove out what you're saying. It's like you build use case. You try to, like, the first step we did was build use cases with potential clients, right? You kind of try to map that out, and then once you get a few, then you have to kind of deliver, right? And the goal is now for us is to prove what we're saying. Like we want to have honest, reliable, responsible AI, and making sure that it actually solves some business use cases with some case studies, right? So we're in the middle of proving that out and coming out with those case studies. But even though saying all that, I think a bigger foot in the door that we've gotten, which is in the financial space.
Hmm.
So my partner, Paul Alisi, he was actually a co-founder at Patient Wing as well, and him and I started Claris AI together. But he has a lot of relationships in finance, right? And I'm talking local banks. Like when we started Claris AI, we didn't really do much online marketing or promotions. We hustled. Everything we did was to hustle locally with people either that we knew or local things. And Paul's been awesome at that. And so we've gained some traction with some potential big banks in the Philadelphia area. and that we're working through those right now. And the use cases are quite interesting. Some of them are very simple, from frequently asked questions and just kind of guiding users to either getting more like a better conversion on their banking website. Like, hey, maybe how do I open an account, or what CD rates do you have, and kind of giving a much more interactive experience around that, and then giving like call to actions, right? It's not just about generating AI and like telling them. It's like, but the next step obviously is what they're going to look at in their business is like, are we converting more? Like, or, are we converting less? And we certainly don't want to be converting less. We want to be converting more people. And so call to actions are very important. And so one of the other big areas that we've recently invested in, which is like the AI agents, which are like autonomous agents that can run, but they can like do things like schedule appointments or do follow-ups, things necessarily not necessarily with you. They can do them without you. And so that's another big area. And so I think, and that also lends in with the OCR technology I talked about. A lot of banks have old stuff. A lot of banks run on old technology. And so, we can really excel and improve their technology at a rate they didn't even think they could, right? At least in some of these banks, right? So anyway, so I would say, yeah, those are the two main areas that we focus on as part of what we're doing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you definitely did.
Okay.
Speaking of like AI agents, it's something I've been really wanting to like get into and learn, because that stuff's awesome. And especially too, it just, as an entrepreneur, it takes a little bit of that extra workload off you if you can get an AI agent to do things for you on your behalf, like nuanced tasks and everything like that, even some tough stuff too. Um, but your extensive experience in technology, um, how's that shaped your leadership style, particularly guiding your team focused on innovative AI solutions?
Yeah, it's funny. I think most people might not like what I'm about to say, right? But I think the key, right? Um, I'm a big proponent of not necessarily depending on AI, right? I know I've said all this up till now, but I think as a person, as an individual, you still want to, like, when I work with my team, it's like we try to do it the hard way, right? It's not like we don't necessarily always try to take the easy way. And I'll give you some examples of why I think that's important, right? So like a very simple example would be things like, and Google Maps, right? Do you remember it used to be like 20 years ago, it was MapQuest, and then before that
Yes.
it was like actual like maps, you had to like read an actual. Now, if you give, and I actually tested this, so I'm pretty confident in what I'm saying, but if you give a map to a college graduate, like a good chunk of them won't even know how to read a map, like an actual physical map. I'm talking about like,
Mm.
hey, if you're stuck in the woods and you need a map, and here you are, right? So, and I think that like, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, obviously in today's technology, it's probably not that important, but you can take what happened there and apply it to many other things, right? So, and what I mean by that is like, if you become dependent on the AI, and then one day when the AI is not there, it's like, if you can't then do your job, well, I would have a problem with that. I'd be like, well, you should still be able to do at least things that aren't like if it's a customer based thing or a service based thing, that's one thing. But if it's you and your individual job and what you're doing, you should be able to use AI if it's there to help. But if it's not, I don't think it should prevent you to do what you know how to do, right? You should still
Right.
be able to know how to do it. And so that's, I would say that's one of the key things. But then I think the other thing is just lead by example. I know it's probably very cliche, but my in my experience, the best way is to like, it's like if you have an idea or you're trying to do like a particular implementation on something, sometimes you got to get your hands dirty and get in there and do it, because maybe not everyone knows all the different pieces and things. But by doing that and exerting that type of energy, other people, it's very like addictive, or it's very like it tends to like grow on other people when you what kind of work that way. Not for everybody, I'm not gonna lie, but I think for a good chunk of them, because I'm a big proponent of like self-learning.
Yeah.
Like me and my dad, we never like finished college, unfortunately. But I think the key was my dad taught me how to self-learn, and I think if you have that ability and you're able to let go of some of that pride as you're doing things, and learn, and like, hey, it's like, no, I don't know how to do this. Now, should I know how to do it? Yes. Okay. Like, I'll do everything I can to figure it out. Now, again, I know in some situations, like, time is sensitive, and things like that. But I think, those are all, I would say, very good mindsets or like strategies I employ when I look for new hires or teammates.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Self-learning is so important. So, so important. People think that once they're done their higher education, whatever that may be, is that they stop learning. And it's like, once you stop learning, you start dying. And I'm a firm believer as traditional education, creates you a living. Self education creates you a lifestyle, creates you a fortune at the end of the day. That's my belief. Um, but you mentioned your team. When building your team, what qualities do you prioritize to ensure like alignment with Claris's mission and values?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down, like, and in fact, I think even like I've seen some recent videos with Elon Musk where, so I think the key is this, right? I think when you're doing it, obviously you want to look for talent, right? Skill and talent are very important when you're building a team, especially like as your like company grows, different levels, you'll need different skills and different talents, right? And if you hire just like based off one at a lower level, and then you need to adapt or adjust, and those people can't do it, they'll often get cut out, or they'll kind of start to feel bad, or it'll be a bad vibe within the team, and negativity can kind of spread. So it's that dynamic adjustment that you want to have people that are kind of able to adjust to the changing landscape in front of them, especially as you're growing up in a company. But it's like character, right? I think that's another big thing. Like, a lot of people always only just put on skill and talent, but their character's shit, right? So like, it's like, then when you do get to certain levels, that's a big problem too. And so I think I would almost hire based off character, like at the very bottom. Like, are you gonna lie to me? Are you gonna, like, can you honestly say you don't know this? Or like, you have to be able to let me help you. If I can't
Yep.
help you because you're defensive, or not letting me really tell you what needs to be, or like say what needs to
Check the
be
ego at
said.
the door.
Check your ego, dude. Yes, dude, that's 100% check. Like, leave your ego at the door, and I guarantee we will go to new heights. Right? It's
Absolutely.
a so that it's like that character part, but then I think it's like you almost at the same level. I don't know if I would put it's almost at that same foundation level is some kind of skill, and like, as long as that skill is like you can self learn, and so like I would say it's kind of like that. That's really what I look for. Like, do you have a good heart, and can you get shit done? That's the key. you know
Yeah, I totally agree. Being able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I can learn, or hey, I'll find somebody that knows how to do it, or can you teach me, and not be like, oh, I can do everything and lie to you, and then performance drops and blah 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 blah. And now then you have an ethical thing going on that they're lying to you, right?
yeah.
Um, what's the long-term goals for Claris AI, and how do you plan to achieve them?
Yeah, so I don't know if yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of long-term goals. I would say, or like strategic visions, I would say. And I guess I'll share one of my personal ones that I think that Claris will excel at. I actually wrote an article about a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, where I published an article about clinical trials and the future of them, and where I think they're going to go, right? And I think I would say one of the long-term visions is, I think AI is going to change the healthcare landscape in terms of new drug development, right? Like, if you like, it's like when you look at new drug development now, it's kind of like it's really backwards. Like, people, they don't like. It's like when you say the word clinical trial, people just think death and disease, and nobody really wants to be a part of it. And I think that's like it's I understand why, and I kind of get that, why people kind of initially think that. But if you really think about it, clinical trial or like the way that they work, it's like the foundation of all cures and helpfulness in diseases and all the bad shit, in terms of health, right? And if we are able to kind of flip that notion and make it so that people, and it maybe it's not necessarily just rare disease or these things, it's more of a together thing where we can all kind of do it together. I think we would see revolutions in our healthcare industry, right? And that's where I'm striving to. And I wrote an article where, for example, it talked about having like a robot. I think having like, for an example, would be like a robot in your house, and they're like a medical, you can kind of replace a lot of the middle bullshit, right? And you could have, like, now again, we're not there yet. It would take time to train these things and get them there, but you don't need all these sophisticated labs and things in a lot of cases, right? Some you still might, but a lot of it can be done at home. And I think the autonomous robot concepts allows us to do it remotely all over the world. And then the data collection coming back can be much more efficient and beneficial in terms of insights and what we're trying to do. And I would say that's one of my goals is, I think that's certainly a possibility, and I'd like to be involved in that. But yeah, I would say that.
Awesome. Your work emphasizes ethical AI. Can you share an example of how this approach has made like a significant difference for a client or within an industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's like all the clients that we have now, our AI, I would say, like, when you say ethics, right? I'll kind of use one specific case where we teach our AI not, but it's like, don't lie, don't make things up, be very concise and to the point. And if you don't know, say you don't know. And then what we do is we have things internally that will flag that, because we like to know what it doesn't know or what people are trying to know, as in like a general sense. And then what we will try to kind of like rework that back into it. And some good examples of that would be like if it's citing sources, right? So that's something we've worked on now, or we're working on right now. But citing sources can be somewhat problematic because sometimes it'll just make up the source. And so I think obviously you don't want that so I mean, in like a fantasy setting or other types of settings, that's fine. Or like maybe it's like a writing or a creative setting. I think that's fine. It's perfectly fine, especially if you're aware that it's happening. I think as long as you're aware of what's happening, why it's happening. But so sources and citations, and there's actually a lot of companies doing some good work around this that we're looking into leverage as part of our business to extend to our clients, right? And so we're not looking to necessarily just build everything ourselves, right? Because we're not necessarily experts in everything, but we're trying to leverage what's there and what makes the most sense based off the business cases that were presented.
Right, right. That makes sense. It's funny that you said like AI can lie. That's interesting.
I mean, ChatGPT. I mean, again, I'm not sitting here picking on. I mean, look at Google's Gemini, or even what was it before? I forget the name that had before, but yeah, the shit would just lie. It would just make things up or just tell you things that were, and it's not necessarily a lie. When I say
Yeah,
lie,
it's
it's
just
sometimes
misinformation, that's all, not a
right,
lie.
or exactly. It could be like a bias that it has in it, and
Right.
it's trying to deflect, right? So there's a lot of those types of situations that arise in the AIs today.
Yeah, I've never used anything outside of like ChatGPT, Quellbot, Cintrabot, stuff like that. I've never used the one you just said. What was that?
Gemini
Yeah.
is one.
Yeah, I never used Gemini.
And they had one, I forget the name of it. They had before Gemini, Google had like a chat GPT like thing, but it was terrible. And in fact, they did a release where like, and I'll give you another perfect example. It did a release where like people were trying to generate images on it, but it was just only drawing black people. It wouldn't draw any white people. And so you even like historically accurate things, it was just changing the people's skin color. Now, again, I know there's a lot of things around that, but I think being like if you need it to be accurate for a specific thing you're doing and it can't do that, right? Or it's not even telling you, how are you supposed to discern what you're learning? Like you might just think like, okay, that's how it was, or and I'm just using the skin color as an example, but there's a lot of other cases where it's like that. And so if people are actually learning, like our youth and kids are learning from that type of bias or misinformation, then that makes the problem like a millionfold tougher now, because now you've cast a much wider net to how it operates, and so that's going to have a much bigger impact on society.
For sure, definitely. Yeah, accuracy is definitely important on that part. Um, if you had to give like one piece of advice for an aspiring tech entrepreneur to like make significant impact like you are, what would it be?
I would, well, well, again, I would say this, right? It's more about not giving up, right? So a lot of times, I feel like a broken record when I say this, but I think it's like, a lot of times people start a company and it fails, or something fails. Maybe not even the company fails, but just like a big piece of it failed, and then they kind of shut the doors, right? So I think if I was to give the best advice, it's to grow thick skin, right? Like if you don't
Nope.
have thick skin, you're gonna fail, because it's inevitable. Everybody fails at something. It doesn't matter what, I don't care who you are, right? And so what's going to happen is, if you take that failure as ultimate failure, then you will fail. But if you take that failure as a way to learn, and then improve from it and not give up, right? If you give up, then you've given up, and that's, you're checked out. But I think and sometimes it's not your time, right? So sometimes you have more learning to do. But I promise, once you get past that, you'll get to where you want to go.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thick skin is definitely important. Having mental fortitude, right? Being okay when life punches you in the face and you got to get back up. And your feelings might get hurt, all that shit. But you won't take failure as an option. As long as you learn from failure. That was always the thing that I you know, uh, disagreed with traditional education is like, hey, you got an F on a test, or you didn't pass this course. And it was like, they told you you were a failure. You failed. It's like, they didn't necessarily come out of their way to be like, hey, this is why you did fail. And this is how you can learn from it and excel in it and pass. Not like, oh, you're a failure. You got an F on your test. Like they was always graded by letters. Um, and that's, as long as you don't give up and you learn and be like, all right, well, why did this happen and not work? It's like Thomas Edison making a light bulb. He found out what, like 100,000 different ways how to not make a light bulb, and then found one how to make it. It's like, okay, that anybody else would have, you know, given up at a 100,000 failures or whatever it was, just theoretical. But he found out much of a different ways and went on with his journey and wound up giving us freaking these lights and shit.
That's right, man. And it's funny you mentioned that. I love the reference, but with that, and I was going to say too, just to add to that, when I was a kid, I loved one of my favorite movies was Rocky 3. And that's where I learned that too. It's like, because in that one he failed, like he fought Hulk Hogan, and then he lost, because he was more interested in the glamour and what was going on. And then he got his fucking ass beat, right? Because he was like joking around, and he learned the hard way. I mean, I love Rocky 4 too, but I love that one because he really learned in that one what not to do.
Right, right. Well, hey, Todd, time flies when we're having fun. As we're wrapping things up, a lot of people are self-employed like ourselves that are listening to this show. We're really good at what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, our business, our profession, but we're also thinking about the future. We're thinking about like, at some point I may want to make an exit from this company. I may not want to be doing this business anymore. Do you have any thoughts on creating like passive income or replacing your income through investments or anything like that for you, yourself, your future family, or anything?
I do. I mean, yeah, 100%. I think in terms of like exit, like the way I look at it, like when I went into Claris, it's not that I think like, hey, I'm gonna sell it and make a bunch of money, and then I mean, obviously that's always like an option, or like something you're in the back of your mind, and it's possible, or at least that it's possible, right? But I think you know, for me, it's more having the ability to have a company and be able to live off of, and you're helping things, but having kind of some options in front of you that could help you kind of step away. And the way I like to think about it is, it's I have passions that I want to do outside of work, right? Like
Mhm.
in fact, there's things that I want to do that I just can't do because I don't have enough money or I don't have enough this. So one of my goals for this, the reason why I'm doing this is to eventually lead me to that. Like I want to have, like charitable type things, or I love animals, especially exotic animals. But there's a lot to get into there. I never really had a lot of experience as a younger person, so I think I need some money to kind of help me get into that more. And I'm using Claris as a way to kind of leverage that and help me kind of springboard into some maybe later in my life. But I think to your other point around investments and other things, I think now is a great time to consider investments and other things, especially with a lot of the emerging technologies. And I've actually recently, especially with we partnered with a company called Energy Edge, which is local here in Philly, and they're like a financial leader. And I'm trying to use a lot of the experience, or like it's like when you're doing it, right? You could either do it all the hard way and stumble with money that you have, or you could try to find older, wiser people that know better than you with money.
Oh, yeah.
And especially people that have like lived, a long time with a lot of money or know a lot more about those things. And I'm trying to leverage more of that as I go, and especially as I acquire more money.
Oh yeah, I love having you know, conversations with the older, wiser, silver-headed people. They always have deep wisdom, and I love to soak it up. So that's awesome. But hey, Todd, it was a pleasure having you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.